Hello, everyone. We at Cache Software would like to welcome and thank you for joining the webinar today. As you can imagine, the webinar platform itself is being heavily used. If you're having issues staying logged in or it seems a bit sluggish, please be patient and know that you may need to log in again. We do recommend that you view today's webinar in a full screen mode, and this can be done by clicking the full screen button on the webinar's control panel. Use the orange arrow for collapsing and expanding the control panel. We encourage you to use the question feature located on the control panel to type and send any questions that you may have during the presentation. All attendees are muted. We are now, as we are recording this webinar, we will be sending this recording in a follow-up email within the next few days. At this time, I would like to introduce our president, Prabha, and our presenter, Bill Tamala, our Director of Technology.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for this webinar focused on analytics and reporting tool that we have developed for your use. First of all, I want to recognize that the application that you've been using till now, there are many features that we've added over the past 6 months, but most importantly, we made a shift in the way that we present data. We presented data, and especially for those who have moved from legacy over to Pavillio, we recognize that we didn't necessarily give you all the data or the reports that you needed in legacy. And recognizing that, as well as based on the feedback that we've received from you, we've created this new dashboard, which has all the information that you had available in legacy, as well as a variety of other items that you didn't have in legacy, essentially helping you run your organization better. The data that's in there is pulled out of your version of Pavillio and made available so that you can have access to this in real time. The big shift is that real-time data, we believe, is far more valuable than report-based data. And we also recognize that while real-time data gives you real-time information, sometimes you have a need for the reports. All the dashboard items that we'll be covering today will also have a corresponding ability to download the data and then manipulate as you desire. And many of you do that already, where you pull data and then you may use it in some other fashion, or you may put it in Excel and work with it. And this new dashboard and the tiles that we've added in there enable you to do that. With that, we have a short window here, about 45 minutes. I believe we can cover all the content here. As you are going through, if you have questions, please send the questions in. We'll be answering the questions along the way, and we might also stop and answer some questions live that we feel is pertinent to everyone. Now I'll hand it over to Bill to jump into the demo and walk through the new dashboard we have. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. So we will start, from Pavillio, and we'll walk through how to get into Redash, how to use Redash for the reporting, and how to use the new dashboard and the variety of reports available for you now. For those of you who may not have been into the dashboard yet or aren't as familiar with it, we'll start here from the Pavillio main system. Those of you that are an agency admin would have this icon in the top right with the little bar chart, next to the mailbox window. Okay? By clicking this, that will launch a separate tab on your browser and bring you into the program Redash. And Redash is our reporting tool that we're using in Pavillio. This is the common screen you'll see first time you log in. And what you'll want to look for here is the dashboards. So you've got a dashboard link here and a dashboard link here in the top left. Okay. By clicking to this, you get a list of dashboards, and what you're looking for is this new Standard Analytics 2022 dashboard. Okay. Just one little tip for you, a little shortcut, is the little star on the left is a favorite. So if I click on the star, for the dashboards here on the left, I can click on the 2022 option. And then when I launch Redash, I will always see that dashboard as my favorite, right on the top screen. It'll just help you get one little shortcut to get into the dashboard a little faster, when you need to. So from that screen, when you launch the dashboard, this is what we'll start with, okay? And as you'll see, there is a variety of reports, and we'll walk through them and give you some idea of how each one works and how they compare to information you had in the past. A couple of things I want to point out just on how to best use the system. Up here in the top right, there is a refresh option, okay? When you launch the dashboard, to get the most recent information, the most up-to-date data in real time, click that refresh, and that will reload all of the reports and all of the dashboard tiles on this dashboard, okay? Within each tile, you also have the ability to refresh each one. So where the little circle with a time here on the bottom left and a little circle on the bottom right as well, both of those will refresh that tile alone rather than the entire system, okay? At the top of many of the tiles, you'll see a date filter like this, okay? And so it's important to keep an eye on this and see what does the label tell us. In this case, this first tile is showing you billing information by prepared date, by billing date. And this is a companion to what you had used in legacy, your submission reports, reports you may have gotten out of scheduler in the past. So we're using the same terminology. So keep an eye on that date, make sure you're looking at the right value. Prepared date is talking about the billing date. Okay. From this filter, there's a couple different ways you can change this. So if I click into the middle, it's going to open a calendar window for me. Okay. So I can move month to month, and shift around, and just by clicking on the dates in the calendar, it will set a date filter for me. And then I get a pop-up that says, do I want to apply the change? When I click that, the query will reload and apply that date change. The other option we have is this little lightning bolt. This has some shortcuts built into it. So if you want to see data from last month or last week, if you're looking at billing data, this is a shortcut way to find those information, look at the whole year, look at last month, very easily without having to pick specific dates. Okay. The other item I want to point out is the format of this report. And this is formatted in a pivot table. It's a report design that gives you a lot of flexibility, a lot of ability to customize and filter how you want to see the data. If any of you have used pivot tables in Excel, this is very similar to how that works. It's very consistent with that same model. Okay. And the way to think of this is you've got rows going left to right, and you've got columns going up and down. Okay. And so for these fields, I can drag and drop these fields to change the report. So if in this case, I've got a report that's looking at payer name and service line, and then across the top, the prepared date. Well, maybe I want to change this view. Okay, so I can hold my left mouse button down on the prepared date and drag it off the report, and the report will redraw automatically. If instead of seeing the service line in columns or in rows, I want to see them in columns, I can drag it to the top of the page and the report will redraw that way as well. So for each of these, we use the pivot table a lot throughout this dashboard because it gives you a lot of flexibility to look at things different ways. Billing information by prepared date, a submission report, this is very common. People want to look at it by payer. They want to see by service. They might want to see by client name or by status or by prepared date. Different options, different variations. And this gives you the flexibility to change the report on the fly any way you'd like. Okay. By default, the report is looking at a sum. So it's got a total here. So this is the type of calculation it's doing. And then right underneath it, when it says billed, that's looking at billed information, billed charges. Okay. So in this case, this example from our demo system, for billings from July 1st through August 31st, I can see this report, and my total down here at the bottom, I billed $12,640. Okay. So that's what the report is telling you. The other feature we've added onto this in some cases are these shading, the coloring. Okay, and what this is, we call it a heat map. And what this does is it is by color, it's highlighting the biggest values, the biggest numbers. So very quickly, very easily, I can look at this report and see, for this example, case management from Minnesota DHS is my biggest billing amount in this report. The color coding is simply just a way to highlight the biggest numbers, the biggest values, and it's to help simplify finding the data. So we'll scroll on down and show you some of the other reports we've got in the system. Okay. Here on the right, we've got a simple chart just showing you total billed by payer. You know, just simple sum totals. Again, you can change a filter by prepared date, but it gives you a very quick glance look at what am I billing for the different payers that I deal with. Okay. Here on the left, we've got a GL summary, general ledger summary, and you can see the date filter is different. The date filter is looking at a post date. One of the main functions we built into Pavillio is Pavillio has its own general subledger within the system. So all of the transactions you put through the system for finalizing time, for billing, for recording cash, for doing write-offs and expenses, all of that is recorded in a GAAP compliant accrual method accounting process. The accountants will understand the double entry method where you've got debits and credits going into the system for each of these transactions. Okay. There is an export built into Pavillio under the administration menu where you can export all of the general ledger data out, details and summaries by account, and that'll help your accounting team manage your financial statements. Here in Redash, we've given you a simple summary that by month, you need to see base top end totals. What's my cash? How much cash did I receive? What's my total revenue? Did I have any write-offs that I have to deal with? So very, top line summaries just to give you a quick glance to help you manage your business. Okay. So then scrolling down, revenue and cash is obviously the biggest part of the financials. And then you need to deal with what are the services that have not been paid yet. What am I owed as an agency? Okay. And so we've got two summaries that address the two types of data that could be unpaid at this point. On the left side, this aging report claim summary. This is showing you any billed claims that have been billed that have not yet been paid as of this month. And so this allows you to change that month value to see for claims billed prior to 10/31, what has been billed and not paid. They may be paid today, but they were not paid as of this date or whatever date you select from this report. And then the summary gives you totals by payer and then by age. How many claims are 30 days old or 60 days old or 120 days old? And so this will help you manage your unpaid claims to see where do I need to spend the time, where should my biggest attention be, and let you make adjustments as needed. And again, with a pivot table, I can take off the service line and see totals just by payer. In this example, I've got my biggest amount is from Minnesota DHS and it's over 60 days old. That's probably where I need to focus my attention. Then on the right side, we have the companion, which is talking about unbilled services. Okay, so these are finalized timesheets that were entered into the system as of a certain day, but then had not yet been billed. Okay, so there's two components to accounts receivable: billed and unbilled. So billed is on the claim summary. The unbilled is on this right side. Okay, so you can see an estimated amount of dollars that is unbilled. In this case by service line. Okay. And so this gives you an idea of what needs to be billed and what is still pending. Okay. These may be services that are in the failed status, they may be parked, or they may be ready to bill and they just haven't simply been billed out. And so you can see that status across the top. These two tiles give you the summaries, give you information about my claims and my unbilled. And then down below, you've got two tiles below them that give you all of the details behind it. So for the aging, what is my claims detail, individual name, how much was billed, who's the payer, what's my service code, how many hours, and so on. Okay. And then for all of these tiles, where I see these three dots in the top right, I can click on that and download this data as either a CSV file or an Excel file. Okay. So this would let you, work this information, as needed. All of this data is visible in claims management within Pavillio as well, but there is good reason to be able to do some analysis and do some checking on some of these claims just to make your process a little bit easier. So you've got a detail for your aging report, and then right below that, you've got a detail for your unbilled report as well. So you can get sum totals and details together. Okay. That's a lot of the billing and financial information we've kind of organized at the top of the page. And so then below that, we're moving into different sections. Okay. So the first we're looking at is, viewing services delivered, in hours. Okay, so this is simply time that's been entered, services that have been recorded. Again, I can change my dates if I want to look at, a 2-week span. I can change my date filter, and the report will redraw for me. I can look at this by employee, and this can validate, do I have all of the time entered for each employee that I expect? How many hours are they working in a day? Do I see anything that looks unusual? Our Mocha employee here in the middle, has a day of 12 hours. That might be legitimate, but it's at least something that you can see and identify, do I need to pay attention to this? And then you can bring in payer data, the services, the client as well. So this would be most common, if an agency is looking for, how do I know how many hours each employee has worked each week? Did they enter everything that they needed to enter? This would be a report I would use to try and get that gauge, as we go. And again, keep an eye on your filter for your date. This is filtering by service date. This is the date the service was provided. This is not a billing report. This is a service delivery report. Scrolling down, some additional options on different services. Here on the left, we've got an employee payroll data report. So I can look at this and we can, adjust this report. For the year, who are my employees and how much have I paid in total payroll? And then I can adjust this. Let's look at the month of September. We can take off overtime, and we can see, by employee, what has been paid in total wages. Okay. By default, we show across the top, is the data exported out of Pavillio? Okay. Some data has not been exported, some data has, and so you can see that variable. This report gives you the ability to make changes here where I can total my total wages, or maybe I want to look at total hours. And so I can change this drop down and look at it from the hours perspective rather than dollars. Okay. So when you're using payroll out of Pavillio, you can get a sum total report of this data. On the right side, again, we're looking at it by service date. By payer, by service line, how many hours have been recorded? How many units are we dealing with? How many dollars have been billed and paid? Okay, so this is looking at your claim data a little bit differently, where it's looking at it by the date the services are provided. So this would correspond to how your payroll is processed, or how many hours of work your caregivers have provided. So it gives you some sum totals by service and by payer to see how those things are shaking out. Moving down a little further. So now we're getting into more client management, information. Different parts of the system that you need to help manage your services and make sure that the services are being provided properly. We've got a report that's looking at all of your service agreements. Okay, so by default, what this tile is doing is it's pulling all active service agreements, anything where the end date is after today. This is not looking at historical information. It's looking at what is active now. Okay, and it's showing you the client, the services, the codes, what's been authorized, and what's been used, and so on. Okay, so this is one view of the agreements. Okay, and then if we scroll all the way to the bottom, we have another view of service agreements that's looking specifically at units provided. Okay, so very similar to what you saw in Legacy, we've added some calculations in here so that you can get some easy numbers to give to your caregivers, to give to your families, or to your case managers. So for Jack, here are my different services, how many units have been authorized, and then we've broken those down into hours per week, hours per day, hours per month, so that however you're managing your business, however it's easiest for your families and caregivers to manage their information, what's the best measurement to use. And then just to the right, how many actual units have been used, what's remaining, your remaining units on that authorization, and then again, remaining hours per week, hours per day, and hours per month. So this was something that we heard a lot that would be very helpful, that people used a lot in Legacy. And so we brought it in here so that you've got an easy way to look at this. And again, by refreshing this tile at the bottom, you can get real-time information, real-time updates. As services are recorded, as they're put into the system, this can be refreshed as you go. Just some of the other tiles that we've added. We've got a pivot table looking at paid information. What are the claims that were paid, by paid date? Again, this corresponds to the general ledger data, but if you want to see some summaries of how many dollars have been recorded payer by payer, client by client, an easy way to get you some totals. We've got a tile here on the left, any claims that have been denied by your payer or have been rejected while they're being sent to the payer. Okay. Again, these correspond to tiles within claims management, but this will give you summary totals. If you see a report that looks like this, where there's no value under the sum and there's no fields, that means there's no information that the query has pulled for your agency. In this case, what this means is for this agency, there are no denied claims, there are no rejected claims, so there's no result. When you do your next billing, you'll refresh this and you may have data that shows up at that time. Okay, so this is not an error, it's just simply how a no result or no data pulls through, but it will refresh as you go. Okay. Scrolling up here on the left, this was one thing that we heard from a variety of users that would be very helpful, is to see by employee what was the last day he or she worked. Okay. And this is simply that. It's a list of all of your employees. What is the date that they last worked? What is the last timesheet that came through on the system? I can sort this by name, first name, last name, or the date worked, so that I can see who worked most recently and who has some more work to do. We've added a tile here talking about failed claims. Okay, and failed claims is a new concept that we have in Pavillio that we didn't really have in Legacy, but this is something that's become important for people to be able to measure and keep track of. a failed claim, or these are records that could not be billed. You know, the validation failed and would not let them bill these claims out. And so to help you identify how do we know what to work on, okay, so I can look at these and I can look at by client, and I can bring in a description that tells me why were these records, you know, failed. Okay. And so I can see by client who's got the most number of hours in the failed bucket, you know, which are the ones that I need to work on. Okay. And if there are multiple reasons, you will see multiple descriptions here. You know, here's an example where, you know, Eric has some records where he was not eligible, and there's at least one where there's a missing UMPI number. Okay. And so, you know, different clients will show the different issues that they have with their services. And by default, this is showing you the total number of hours that are in the failed card. Okay. This report will show you both failed and parked records, but we'll give you some summaries to see by client what is the reason that these claims were failed. Okay. And then finally, just a couple of lists that people ask for very commonly. You know, creating here on the left the client, caregiver, and service connections. Okay. This is a concept we added in Pavillio, where you link the caregiver to the client for services, particularly for EVV. And so what this can do is show you all of the clients that are related to a specific caregiver, and what services is that for. Are they using the system via EVV, or are they using the system, you know, through manual entry on Pavillio's website? So this will help you identify who's using EVV properly, and what are all of the relationships built between the clients and the caregivers. This same information is on both the top of the client's profile and on top of the caregiver's profile, but this will give you the full agency level view of this information. And then here on the right, the same type of relationship, you know, who are the clients and who are the responsible parties that have been set up within the system. You know, client information, address information, responsible party connections and numbers, so that you can get a quick glance of who are the clients and who is their responsible party, who's their guardian. You know, the responsible party is a user in your EVV app. And so this link and these lists become important for you to help manage who are the different users and which clients are they connected to. So that's kind of a quick walkthrough, you know, all the different reports. You know, as you can see, we've got a variety of different things, you know, some on the client side, some on the financial and the billing and the service side. All of these are available now. You know, they've all been copied through to each agency. So when you open and refresh, you will see all of these tiles. Some of them may not have any data in them, depending on your setup, and some of them may have a lot. We'll continue to add to this as we go. You know, as we get more feedback and additional users that are using the reporting, using the dashboards to see, you know, what other information is important, we'll continue to add to this in the future, and we'll deploy additional updates as they become available. At this point, if you have any questions or requests that you've sent in, you know, we can review a few of those. We got a few minutes left.
Yep, I have a couple of questions here. One of the questions that came through was how often is this data updated? This is in large systems, the ability to have a data set that is separate from the live data allows you to do things like what we are doing here, which is slice and dice the data in ways which support the business. To do that, the best way to implement it is to have a separate data source. So essentially, we've copied the data to a different database, which allows you to do this. And to do an analytics such as this, the data is refreshed on an overnight basis. As of right now, we have it as an overnight basis, and in future, we'll bring it closer to real time. But the data is a day, if you look at it, it's usually refreshed at 2 or 3 in the morning, and therefore when you start the day, it's going to be fresh data, and then it refreshes the next evening. Just another thing, Bill, I think a couple of people have asked the question, how do you really get into Redash? So can you go back to the screen from there. So if you could just walk through how people get into Redash.
Okay, so this is the main Pavillio screen, and up on the top right, if you can see my mouse, I'll move it around a little bit. This little bar chart, the 4 bars with the dots above it, and the top right, this is the icon that will launch Redash. Okay, so if I click on this icon, it will launch a new tile called Redash, and then I can look at my dashboards and launch the 2022 analytics, which will bring me into the reports. So if you're looking at your Pavillio and you do not see this icon on the top right, that is very likely a permissions issue. And so you should check with your administrator within your agency to see if you can get permission to have this requires the agency admin role to turn this icon on. So if you don't see the icon, that means you don't have permission to access it yet. Check with your agency admin, and that will allow you to use the tool.
Another question is the presentation being recorded? Yes, it is, and we will be sending that out, and I believe Christine responded to that. So those who could not attend today, we will send out a link to this, and you can share that with others who are not able to attend. I'm just looking through some of the other questions. There's some specific questions on can we look at timesheet data? Can we look at some EVV data? As we continue to evolve this, the nice thing about this is it allows us to add new reports and new data very quickly and make it available to everyone. So as you come across situations where you think that you need additional data, let us know what it is, and based on how applicable it is to everyone, we'll add that into this standard analytics dashboard so that everyone will have access to it. Let's see. If you have other questions, please use the questions tile in the GoToWebinar on the right side. Pull that down and type in a question. Some of you have already sent some questions in. Feel free to ask more questions. Again, to recap, the idea of dashboards and the ability to do analytics is a enhancement over static reports that all systems used to have. Static reports, while are useful, expire right away, and we are trying to get you real-time information so that you have real-time data to work with. This is a shift in thinking and a shift in operations, and as I indicated earlier, we did in haste of getting things out, there were some reports that were missing when you migrated from legacy to Pavillio, but we believe we've closed that gap now, and not only do you have the reports you had before that you were familiar with, you have more data available now that you can you can use to run your organization. There's a couple of other questions that have come in. How do you request new reports to be added in Redash? This is through the support process. Send in a support ticket. Just a reminder for everyone that if you send in a support request, send it to support@pavillio.com, and that goes in, and based on the requests that come in, we will address the new reports that need to be added. So please use that as a way to get your request queued up. There are some questions regarding billing reports being separate from financial reports. While we have some security capabilities, we'll have to take a look at that. I think this is from Don. We'll have to take a look at that to see what's a good way, because a lot of times there is billing information that you can pull up that's biller pertinent. Within Pavillio, there is a fair amount of permissions that restrict access to billing versus financials. Don, I'll follow up with you and respond to this based on your particular request. Let's see. The view by service line, client, employee, or payer name, service delivered in hours. Not quite sure which one that is.
This one.
Service line. Can you describe that report again, Bill?
So this report is a view of services that have been entered into the system that, by employee, by client, by payer, by service line, whichever combination you're picking from, will identify by day how many hours have been entered into the system. And so this is essentially sum totals of timesheets or visit records that have been put in. This is looking at finalized time records. So anything entered manually by a biller or that has come in from EVV that's been finalized, these records will give you, sum total of hours, by service, by payer, by employee, by client. So the idea is to give you some totals of hours worked by all of these different combinations.
Okay, very good. That's a lot of good questions there. Thank you for going through this, Bill. If there aren't any other questions, we will also be compiling the questions and sending responses to these questions when we follow up with the video link. One last question that popped up since we have some extra time. How do you export the reports and print out the reports if needed? So can you just walk through an example of that, please?
So from any of these tiles, okay, in the top right, there are 3 blue dots. Okay, if you click on that, it will give you the option to download this data as either Excel or CSV. And so if I download this file, you'll see it show up on your browser in the bottom left as a downloaded file. And then by clicking on it, the file will automatically launch in Excel or whatever the other program is and output the data, into a table that you can work with. Some of the formatting that's in the system, with the pivot tables, the export doesn't export a pivot table itself, but it will export all of the data in a flat table, so that if you need it and want to build your own pivot table within Excel or do any other reporting and analysis or totals or VLOOKUPs, you're able to do that. So, in the top right of each of these tiles, look for the blue dots and then click on that to get to the download option.
Okay, very good. Thanks everyone for the questions and joining us today. Hopefully this will be helpful in running your organization. As we said, we will continue to add more valuable reports and dashboards that help run the organization. And we welcome feedback. To be honest, a lot of this is based on your feedback that you've given us and the reports that have been asked by various agencies. We've just compiled that into the 2022 dashboard for everyone to be able to use. With that, any other closing thoughts, Bill?
No, thank you all for your time.
Thank you for your time. And this is the holiday season. Happy holidays. And we will talk to you again in 2022. Have a good afternoon.